Today, I'm putting 5 of the most elite trainers on Fraud Watch. Let's begin by getting the obvious one out the way with our first entry, Geeta. You knew she'd be on here, I knew she'd be on here. Well, yeah, because I'm the one that's writing the script. Let's go into some more detail about why. Geeta stands at the end of the Paldea region's Pokemon League as the top champion, tasked with managing the Elite Four and testing whether challengers deserve the title of champion level trainer. But if this is the team you're using to test people with, I wouldn't be surprised if half the NPCs you run into are champion ranked trainers. Sergio the office worker? Yeah, I reckon they're secretly a champion in their spare time. If I had to point a finger as to why Geeta's battle feels so underwhelming, I'd point it firmly at the speed stats of her Pokemon. 5 of the 6 Pokemon on Geeta's team have a base speed lower than 90, meaning they're easily outrun by any of the moderately fast Pokemon picked up on your travels. To anyone that's played competitively before, the squad's worst defenders stand out immediately as Avalugg and Go-Goat because, well, they're Avalugg and Go-Goat. But I'd controversially throw King Gambit into the mix too. Not only are they all incredibly slow, they're also weak to a combined total of 12 different types. These glaring downsides give the player so many opportunities and methods to outspeed and one-shot all 3 of them before they get a chance to use a single move on the battlefield. And don't get me started if you pick Fuecoco as a starter, since with the exception of her Glamora that always comes out last, Geeta's entire team suffers from a weakness to fire or ghost type attacks. You guys don't even need to feed your Skeledirge sandwiches. There's an entire meal waiting for you at the end of the Pokemon League. This leads me on to the final and most controversial reason why Geeta is on Fraud Watch, and it's none other than that Glamora that always comes out last. Glamora's ability, Toxic Debris, sets up toxic spikes whenever it's hit by a physical attack. These spikes poison the majority of Pokemon entering the battlefield, and therefore it's recommended to send out Glamora as early as possible in a battle to make the most of this effect. Now, if you're not that clued up on Pokemon mechanics or don't really play the games at all, you might have absolutely no idea what I just said. So to put it simply, Geeta having a Glamora as her last Pokemon is like trying to drive a car forwards whilst looking out the rear window. Wow, Hmaz, this sounds like a very compelling case. So then why is Geeta only number 5 on this list? Well, if I'm being objective and unbiased, which I definitely always am, I acknowledge that her rematch team in the Blueberry Academy does fix a lot of her issues, by not only making Glamora her first Pokemon, but also sending her Go-Goat to the Shadow Realm and replacing it with a Chestnut. Speaking of goats, let's open up an investigation into Leon. The brave, undefeatable, nigh invincible Leon himself. Does this bozo really have the minerals to live up to that title? Well, I mean, I could argue that none of Leon's positive reputation comes from himself, instead from the hyperbole of his fans that idolize him unconditionally, just like how real life sports fans do with their favorite players. But it's funnier if I do treat him as the strongest trainer of all time. The first reason why the Galarian champion is a massive fraud is, of course, that a child armed with a level 5 starter Pokemon was able to dethrone the supposed Messi of battling in about 2 weeks. Disgruntled Leon stans and contrarians alike may argue this applies to every champion, but the extra detail within Sword and Shield's story, that Leon himself hands you the first building block to ending his whole career, is hilarious. Though as far as battling goes, Leon has a pretty solid squad, on par with the likes of Cynthia and Nemona. Aegislash, Dragapult, Haxorus, and his big Gigantamax Charizard are all incredibly powerful Pokemon. However, once you dig a bit below the surface and start sifting through the Pokemon he uses in the Battle Tower, things get odd. Is that a special attacking Rillaboom? A physical attacking Inteleon and Mr. Rhyme? What's this sudden obsession with ignoring your Pokemon's highest stat, Leon? Maybe it's for the best though, because even when he builds his Rillaboom as a physical attacker, he completely neglects his grass typing and gives it Drain Punch as its only attacking move. This might be the only time in history where a Sandygast can completely shut down a Rillaboom. His Haxorus knows Leer. I don't think there's much more I need to say about that. but I will. Trying to make a Pokemon with 147 base attack as a support has to count as some type of Pokemon neglect. Like, please just give it Dragon Dance or something instead. So in conclusion, it appears after getting decimated by his brother's mute friend, Leon has had some sort of mental crisis. Does that make him weak? No, mental health matters and all that. It just means that he might have to take an extended break from battling. While Leon only took one loss to completely break down, our next entry is a certified expert in losing. By the end of Pokemon Black and White's main story, Champion Alder is ranked as the 4th strongest trainer in the region. First he loses to N in the champion battle, then after you defeat N and claim the champion rank for yourself, Getsus spawns in with stronger Pokemon than the guy you just beat. That's at least 3 trainers, including yourself, who outrank the person that's meant to outrank everyone. Things don't get much better in the events between Black and White and their sequels, when Alder loses again to an 11-year-old Iris, and has the champion position permanently nabbed from them. But if you ask me, all these battles were a foregone conclusion. As much as I don't want to dogpile on the bug type, because I mean, they already get enough abuse as it is. When your battle strategy is specializing in the weakest type in the game, what did you really think was going to happen? Escavalier, Bouffalont, Druddigon, and Excelgor are all decent enough Pokemon, but that's all they are. Decent. None of them have a stat total above 500, and, with the exception of Excelgor, are all pitifully slow. Vanillux, on the other hand, does have a stat total over 500. It's just a shame that it's a pure ice type with 4 weaknesses and a middling speed stat, meaning it gets eaten for dessert by a wide variety of Pokemon. Alder's ace Pokemon, Volcarona, is carrying this entire team on its moth-shaped back. Even after all these setbacks, it could, in theory, sweep the player's entire team by setting up a Quiver Dance and spamming Bug Buzz. However, Volcarona's other 2 moves, Overheat and Hyper Beam, make this a much harder task than it needs to be, either by weakening Volcarona's damage or preventing them from moving entirely the next turn. If only there was a Fire-type move that raised your special attack instead of lowering it, that was exclusive to Volcarona. Nah, we can't give him that much assistance. Remember, this guy's speciality is losing to people. But hey, at least he's not a war criminal. Unlike our number 2 on this list, Pokemon Champion Lance. I'm gonna preface this entry by saying that there's pretty much nothing objectively wrong with any of Lance's teams. The majority of his Pokemon pack a serious punch, and even with my incredibly nitpicky nature, I was able to find only one pretty questionable choice in his Pokemon item and move selection. That being a Garchomp with the move Roar in Heart Gold Soul Silver. Not the biggest crime against humanity he's committed, but the move's negative priority does give the player a free opportunity to one-shot Garchomp whenever it's picked by the AI. So if my judgment can't find much to fault, maybe someone else should do an inspection, like the Pokemon Police? That's right, because when Lance isn't airstriking villagers in the manga, he's generating illegitimate Pokemon to use in official league matches. In Generation 1, his Dragonite knows Barrier, a move it isn't able to learn until 17 years later in Pokemon X and Y. Then in Gold and Silver, Lance's Aerodactyl knows Rock Slide, even though that move was unable to be taught to them until Ruby and Sapphire. Lance's last but certainly not least severe crime goes to his band of underleveled dragons. If Dragonair evolves into Dragonite at level 55, tell me why this guy has 3 of them all under that level. If I've done my maths correctly, 48, 49, and 50 are all numbers that are below 55. But wait. It gets worse, because in Heart Gold Soul Silver, he has a Dragonite that's level 40. 40. That's 15 levels below legality, ladies and gentlemen. That's not the only reason why Lance is so high up on this list though. It's one thing to cheat in Pokemon and win, but to cheat and lose is a level of pathetic we haven't covered so far. Canonically losing to Blue, Red, Gold, Leon, and Diantha just to name a few, Lance has more L's than the word illegal, which is ironically the best way to describe his battling style. Before we reach the final entry on our list, here's some honourable mentions for you. First up, we have Wallace, for thinking that Love Disc is an acceptable Pokemon to use in battle. I don't care if it was when he was a gym leader, that's just not on. Then you have Kieran, solely for this. Tell you what, this looks like a prime opportunity to set up a quiver dance, especially when one of his Pokemon can't even attack. Yeah, no, Kieran, supposed strongest trainer, just tried to helping hand his Porygon Z when it's not, he can't even bloody attack. Oh yeah, no, but guys, trust me, Kieran's gonna be the hardest trainer of all time. Now, without further ado, the most fraudulent Pokemon champion is the first one you battle in the series. From an outsider's perspective, this might have been obvious. Your rival in Red and Blue is arrogant and overconfident, qualities that don't mesh well with the position of champion, where one loss can put your entire career in jeopardy. So it's no surprise that minutes after gaining the critical role for himself, he loses it to the protagonist. That loss made Blue the shortest reigning champion of all time, and thus defending him from the title of #1 fraud is extremely hard, because, well, there isn't much evidence to prove otherwise. He's kind of like the Liz Truss of Pokemon champions if you think about it. But what might not be well known by the majority of Pokemon fans is just how terrible Blue's first champion team was. Not in the funny haha way like Geeta or Alder, I'm talking about genuinely horrific team building that makes every other champion's team on this list look like 6 Arceus with huge power. Things start off a little suspect with his first Pokemon Pidgeot having Wing Attack as its only consistent damaging move, and alarm bells only start to ring louder when looking at his Alakazam. The 2 attacks the Pokemon knows are Psybeam and Psychic, both Psychic type moves with 65 and 90 base power respectively. With Psychic being the stronger of the pair, there is really no reason why Blue should have Psybeam, unless he wanted to fish for a 10% chance of confusion. But whatever, you could argue this is just a nitpick. What I can't ignore, however, is when this team takes a complete nosedive in quality with Rhydon, Horn Drill, Fury Attack, Leer, and Tail Whip. My Rhino in Christ, you are a rock ground type. Where are the rock and ground type moves? Earthquake and Rock Slide? Nah, let me give myself 2 moves I learned at level 1 that both lower the user's defense by 1 stage. That's really going to help. I clowned on Leon for having Leer on his Haxorus, even though I could sort of see the logic in lowering both opponents' defense stats in a double battle, but this moveset is completely inexcusable for a champion. If a tutorial trainer had both Leer and Tail Whip on their Pokemon, I'd be confused. It seems there was a defense lowering epidemic back in 1996, as both Blue's Gyarados and Arcanine also know Leer, the latter of which having the 40 base power Ember as its only fire type attack. Then there's Executor, Hypnosis, Barrage, Stomp, and non-applicable. Man, I miss when Pokemon games were difficult. Back in my day, our Grass and Psychic type attackers had only 3 moves, and no same type bonus on their attacks. All the potential starter Pokemon he can have do have passable movesets, but some of these examples listed show that Blue's overconfidence might just be a mask to hide a complete lack of Pokemon knowledge. And that is why Blue is the most fraudulent Pokemon champion of all time. Thanks for watching, and if you want me to make more videos like this, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thank you to all my channel members, and I'll see you in the next one.